Welcome back to Michelle Crochet, and look what I got my hands on. I got my hands on the new Flower Power Granny Square yarn, and I'm going to do a review for you today, so stay tuned. First things first, if you saw my video from last week, you know how much of a hassle it was to get my hands on this yarn. If you haven't seen that and you want to hear about my crazy story about getting my hands on this yarn, make sure you go back and watch that video. So let's get into this one though. I am pretty excited to try this. Now, I have kind of mixed feelings about the Granny Square, like the all-in-one Granny Square yarn. But this one, you know, similar. This one is going to make these kind of flowery Granny Squares. I'm pretty excited about. I like this colorway. I think it's going to be really cool. And I was wanting to kind of give it another try, and this gave me a chance to give it another try. So this is your basic, like, Red Heart Super Saver yarn. It's like everything you would expect in a Red Heart Super Saver. Now, I think let's go to the table so we can kind of look at the label together, kind of see what we're getting into. I mean, we know this is the goal, but how do we get there? So, meet me at the table. Okay, here we are at the table. So, Red Heart Flower Power all-in-one. It says no color switching, keep on stitching. It looks like here's a pattern suggestion of this blanket, and I think that would be a great, like, easy, beginner friendly kind of thing. I could see the beauty in this, and it's super cute. I mean, you could get a couple different, like, colorways, crochet them up, sew them together, and it would be pretty cute. I think that's adorable. All right, looks like we're going to be using an eye hook, which I have here. And this colorway that goes from, it's the light gray, the dark gray, and the black is the Black Dahlia. I thought this was kind of, had a nice little pop. We'll see what it looks like when it comes out though. All right, so it's your basic Red Heart, medium weight 4, recommended of an eye hook, 100% acrylic, and it says one ball should equal out to about 12 squares. So last time I did one of these, it actually ended up more. Like, I ended up with more than what they said was guaranteed. So that's pretty awesome. This one though, I did notice it says up to 12 squares. So I'm hoping to hit the 12. I mean, if we end up with more, that'd be cool too. All right, so make sure that we pull from the correct place. So we are supposed to pull from the center and not the outside. So don't pull from the outside. So easy enough. Now let's slip this label off. Take a look inside. Try to open this gently so we don't tear it. Oh, there's always a little tearage for me. Let me come in from the other side so we don't tear it any more than we have to. Alright, but that's not going to affect our pattern. Okay, inside the label here, we have all-in-one Flower Power motif. They're going to be 6-inch squares. I don't know if you can see this. And here's our instructions on how to do it. And there's even a little diagram, which is kind of nice. A little stitch key here that shows you, where you're supposed to be placing all those stitches. Now, here's something I would like to know. Are you somebody who follows written instructions? Are you somebody who follows only videos? Or are you somebody who can read diagrams? Like, what's your preference? Like, what do you like to do? I like all of it. I like the ability to be able to read a diagram, and I like the ability to be able to follow a pattern. So let's go ahead and let's do maybe the first square together and see how it works out. All right, so I'm going to get this square started and I'll meet up with you after the first row. Okay, so I ended up pulling it out and starting over, but I was able to get the first row completed, ending with the color change on my second try. So this is one of those things where it takes a little finagling, but you'll figure it out. All right, so I'll meet back up with you when I have row 2 complete. I've got round 2 complete, and the color change doesn't happen until after the next round. So we're still, using the black yarn right now. So I'll check in when I finish the third round. I just finished my first attempt at the third row, and I still have this much black yarn left. So I'm going to have to pull out some stitches, loosen some stuff up, and have to try it again. So I'll be back. Okay, upon a second attempt, I got it this time. It looks pretty good. I mean, you can already see the flower forming. So now we're on to this lighter color and row 4, and I'll be back with a report on how that goes. Something I just want to show before I get into row 4 is there's a decent amount of like bleed from the black into the gray, which, you know, kind of happens. And if you're real fussy about that, sorry for your luck, because unfortunately that seems to happen. And it looks like kind of throughout the ball, it's not like super uncommon either. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there before I got any farther into row 4. Row 4 is complete, and this is what it's looking like. You can really see that flower pronounced, kind of rounded out on this row. All right, I'm going to go on to the next row, and I'll check back in. We have one more row, and then we'll be finished up. Okay, I just finished up round 6. This is what it's looking like. I think that there's just enough of a contrast between this darker gray and the black to make the center kind of pop a little bit. I think it looks pretty good. And you can see right here, this is where the light gray and the darker gray meet up is right here. So there's just enough to weave an end after I fasten off. Now, these are supposed to be about 6 inches. And if you measure, like, if you're not measuring the very edge, if you're measuring just kind of like underneath the stitches to underneath the stitches, it hits 6. Like, so if you went ahead and blocked this, it's going to be over 6, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I mean, it says it's supposed to be about 6 inches. So I think it looks good. I'm going to go ahead and work up the rest of them and see how many squares I can get out of this. And I will meet back up with you with my final thoughts. I am back with my final thoughts. Now, this is what I ended up with. On the label, it said that it was supposed to be 12 squares. I actually ended up with 13 squares, and which is probably a good thing because not all of them came out nicely. So let me just kind of show you the results, and then I'll kind of tell you a little bit more. Now, this one here, fabulous, beautiful. The design came out perfect. You could see, you know, definitely you could tell it's supposed to be a flower. On the other hand, I had ones that came out like this, where there wasn't enough to finish them, to do the middle. And this is what was, you know, this is what I had to work with. Like what's crocheted obviously in here, and this. That's it. And I was very careful about where I was cutting my yarn to make sure that I tried to give myself as much as possible of each color. So, and I couldn't finish the middle with that color. I mean, I tried and tried and tried. I crocheted as tight as I could. I mean, I could have dropped down like multiple hook sizes maybe and got it, but then that's going to throw everything else off. So, I mean, you got to use the hook that's recommended or the one, you know, at least that gets you the gauge. Also, there was a lot of extra of the black, and I tried to go through, like, I took these rounds out multiple times and tried to crochet super loose so that it would change in the right spot, and it didn't. And you can see that, you know, this color didn't work out. The black didn't actually work out. This is probably my worst looking one, which, I mean, in a way is still, you know, it's still better than it could be, but it's not great. I mean, I'm not sure if somebody showed this to me that I would be like 100% boom, like that's a flower. It would take me a minute to figure that out because you can see all this extra black. And yes, I could have cut the yarn and, you know, I could have taken off the black I needed to and switched to the gray where I needed to. But I mean, the entire point of this yarn is it's an all-in-one. You're supposed to like have the color changes at the right spots. I mean, it defeats the purpose of the yarn. Now, like I said though, I mean, some of them came out perfectly, like this one. This one, great. But this one, like I said, this is the worst one. And I just wanted to show you basically like, this is the best one, this is the worst one. You know, I have a couple that look more like this. So, I mean, as far as, you know, yes, I got 13 out of the ball instead of 12. But if you went with ones that actually worked out perfectly, it'd probably be closer to 10. Which is such a bummer. And, I mean, it just was so frustrating. I spent so much time, like, taking, you know, frogging rows. It was just the amount of time it took. And I mean, it would have been a heck of a lot quicker. Who would have thought I would say this? Because I hate weaving in ends. But it would have been better, like, mentally for me, quicker to just snip the yarn and change colors. And if you're going to do that, you might as well pick out yarn from your own stash or pick out your own colors so you can have whatever you want versus being locked into, like, this is, you know, to their colors. I think it's one of those things that I wouldn't go around telling everybody, like, oh, you got to go out and try this. It's fabulous. I would say, you know, I would give them my pros, my cons, and say, you know what? It's up to you. I mean, if you want to give it a try, maybe you'll have better luck. Maybe it's just the ball I got. But it's just, it's not for me. Now, I will say the granny square, like the original, you know, all-in-one granny square, like that one is a little bit more forgiving from the standpoint that you don't have this like perfectly defined image in the middle. Like you're working with a basic, you know, granny square, which I mean with that, like if there's like one or two double crochets, you know, kind of like here, like there's two double crochets that are the wrong color, and there's, you know, up here there's, I don't know, like 5 that are the wrong color. You can get away with that a little bit more, I feel like, with the all-in-one granny. But this one, because you're supposed to be making this, you know, this perfect image of this flower, and I mean, it's supposed to be a specific design, this one's not as forgiving. And so this one I found very frustrating. And I mean, I spent a lot of time like, why am I doing this? This is stupid. And just wanting, you know, just wanting to throw it down and just be done with it, because it was frustrating. And I mean, crocheting to me, like, I don't want it to feel like work. You know, obviously it feels like work because sometimes you're just doing the same thing over and over and over. But I don't want it, you know, it should be still an enjoyable experience. Like when I get done with the project, I should be able to look at it and be like, whew, that was tough, but I got through and I end up with this great product. And I mean, this one, totally happy. I could look at this and I'm like, yeah, that was a lot of work, but it looks good. But then when you end up with squares like this, that no matter what, it's just not going to work out unless you cut that yarn and you're weaving in ends, which defeats the purpose. This is maddening to me. So I think if it's something like, I'm not going to recommend, you know, to people, go out, buy this, it's great. I would say, you know, here's the pros, here's the cons, make the best decision for you. Because maybe you're somebody that doesn't mind, you know, or you're like, oh, well, if I just run into, you know, a spot every once in a while where, you know, I have to cut the yarn and, you know, reattach the new color, that's not a big deal to me. I'll weave in a couple of ends. You know, that's totally cool, because the only time I really had like a square that I didn't have enough of a color is this one and maybe one other one. The majority of the time I did have plenty of each color. I mean, I had more issues of having too much of a color than I did not having enough. Like this one, there's nothing I could do to save that. I tried, there's nothing I could do. But the majority of the time it was on the other end of the spectrum of being too much of a color. So, I mean, that being said, I mean that I'd rather have too much of the color, have to cut the yarn, than not have enough. And this happened once, maybe twice, but I think this might be the only, I'm looking back through my stack here, this is the only one I see that I didn't have enough of a color. So I mean, 1 out of 13 not having enough color, that's pretty decent odds. But I don't know, it's just, to me, the trying to get it just perfect over and over and over is too much. I mean, every row, my tension was different. Like on this one, super duper tight on the first, you know, round, and then super loosey goosey on, you know, on the next color, and then on the last color, like I had a ton left over, so I mean, then I was super loosey goosey on that one. Like, those are just kind of my thoughts I thought I'd share with you. I hope that if you do end up trying it, I hope you have better luck than I did, and I hope you're doing well. But until next time, take care.